The ancient Greeks had a warning: beware of those bearing gifts. But what happens when the gift is a duchess crashing your gates uninvited? We're about to expose how Paris Fashion Week became the stage for a Trojan horse invasion that left a trail of lies, humiliation, and destruction. Let's get into it. What if the most prestigious event in the fashion world was nothing more than a stage for a calculated act of war? Let's get into it. The story begins not with an invitation, but with a full-scale invasion. Paris Fashion Week is not a party. It's a military operation planned with more precision than a royal coronation. For months, an army of producers, designers, and publicists work in concert, choreographing a multi-million-dollar spectacle where every single detail is locked down. The seating chart alone is a brutal political document, a map of power where a single inch can define a career. Into this hermetically sealed world of order and influence, Meghan Markle detonated herself like an 11th-hour bombshell. Sources inside the brand's PR team confirm the absolute chaos. This wasn't on any official schedule. Publicists, who live and die by their run of show documents, were left scrambling. The front row, that sacred and carefully curated ecosystem of top-tier editors, billionaire clients, and A-list celebrities, was thrown into disarray. This wasn't an oversight. It was a tactical strike. A maneuver designed for maximum disruption and, more importantly, maximum media capture. Imagine for a second that you are one of the designers. An artisan who has poured their soul, their savings, their entire being into a collection. You've worked for a year on a 15-minute show that will define your future, only to wake up and discover your life's work is about to become the background wallpaper for a Sussex publicity stunt. That's not drama. That's a hostile takeover. The narrative her Montecito machine wanted to project was one of effortless global chic, an icon graciously descending upon Paris to reclaim her rightful place among the elite. But the receipts, as they always do, tell a completely different and far more pathetic story. This was a desperate, cynical power play. This was not a celebration of fashion, it was a hijack. The goal was not to honor a creative vision but to seize it, to plaster her image over it so completely that the brand and the Duchess would become indistinguishable in the public mind. It's a classic parasite-host relationship. And the fashion house, in a moment of what can only be described as spectacular weakness or sheer marketing avarice, unlocked the gates and welcomed the Trojan horse. They saw the potential for a surge in online chatter, a tsunami of free press, completely oblivious to the fact that the inferno of controversy that follows Meghan everywhere she goes would consume their entire message, their collection, and their credibility. This was step one in a well-worn playbook of pure desperation. It was a transparent attempt to claw back relevance in a ruthless arena that has no time for amateurs and even less for grifters. As we are about to see, this single, impulsive decision to invade Paris would trigger a catastrophic chain reaction of lies, exposure, and public humiliation so profound it would obliterate any chance she had of ever being taken seriously in that world again. The show was just the beginning. The demolition was yet to come. Something absolutely massive just erupted in the business of fashion, and it exposes the dark, transactional heart of modern celebrity culture. The central question that insiders were screaming was this: why would a prestigious Parisian fashion house, a bastion of heritage and craftsmanship, allow its premiere event to be completely capsized by a last-minute appearance from the Duchess of Montecito? The answer is as simple as it is corrosive. Marketing gold. The brand's new creative director, desperate to make a splash and prove his relevance, saw an opportunity no PR firm on earth could ever manufacture. In today's fractured, chaotic media landscape, attention is the only currency that truly matters. And Meghan Markle is a walking, breathing controversy engine. Whether you admire her calculated ambition or despise her methods, her presence guarantees one thing: clicks, headlines, a global conversation that rockets a brand from the fashion pages to the front page. He didn't just welcome her. Sources say he practically rolled out the red carpet, understanding that the tsunami of free, worldwide publicity would be worth any collateral damage to his brand's integrity. This is the modern devil's bargain, a Faustian pact where brands sacrifice the soul of their art for a fleeting moment of viral fame. The brand consciously chose to sacrifice the integrity of its collection, the respect for its models, and the focus on its craftsmanship, all for a temporary spike in Google Analytics and Instagram mentions. The director knew that the day after his show, every fashion blog, every tabloid, and every social media feed from Tokyo to Toronto would be plastered with Meghan's face right next to his brand's logo. He couldn't have purchased that level of raw exposure for $10 million, but the cost of this bargain is always higher than it first appears. It's a hidden tax on integrity. The headlines the next day were not "A stunning new collection redefines Parisian chic." They were not "A visionary triumph from a new creative voice." They were, universally, "Meghan Markle makes shock appearance in Paris." The craftsmanship, the vision, the months of brutal, back-breaking labor by an entire team, all of it was instantly reduced to a footnote in the ongoing Sussex drama. The brand became a supporting character in her story, not the other way around. This wasn't a partnership. It was a parasitic relationship. And while the director may have basked in the initial glow of global recognition, he was about to learn a brutal lesson that the institution learned years ago. When you willingly invite this level of chaos into your house, you don't get to control what it burns to the ground on its way out. The flames were just getting started. There are strategists. And then there is Marcus Anderson, a man who has attached his career to the Sussex brand like a remora clinging to a shark. To truly understand the forensic anatomy of the Paris debacle, you must understand the man pulling the strings from the shadows. Make no mistake, this was not Meghan's impulsive idea alone. Sources close to the situation have confirmed that this entire operation, from conception to execution, was the brainchild of Anderson, the so-called fixer who reportedly sees Meghan not as a friend, but as a volatile, high-maintenance product in desperate need of a relaunch. His calculation was cold, strategic, and absolutely ruthless. The Netflix deals were floundering in a sea of mediocrity. The Spotify contract had ended in a blaze of public humiliation, with a senior executive branding them grifters. The royal connection, their only real currency, was hemorrhaging credibility by the day. The Meghan Markle brand was toxic, and it needed a complete and total reinvention in a new, sophisticated arena. Hollywood had rejected her. Her forays into philanthropy looked opportunistic and shallow. But fashion? Fashion is a world built on image, power, and perception. It's an entire industry constructed from smoke and mirrors. It was the perfect battlefield. Anderson allegedly began planting the seeds weeks in advance, making discreet calls, leveraging his network of contacts, and pitching this ambush as Meghan's triumphant European return. He sold the fashion house on the promise of explosive, invaluable publicity, and he sold Meghan on the dream of becoming a global fashion icon, a modern-day Diana whose every outfit would be scrutinized and celebrated across the globe. It was a perfectly symbiotic arrangement. Every time Meghan's name hits the headlines, his name is right there beside it. He isn't just a friend, he's her chief enabler, the architect of these increasingly desperate plays for relevance. But here's where the gambit was fatally flawed. A puppet master can only be effective if the puppet is willing and able to follow the script. As Marcus Anderson was about to discover in the most public and humiliating way imaginable, he had orchestrated the perfect event, he had secured the perfect stage, and he had coordinated the perfect entrance. But he had made one catastrophic miscalculation. He could not control the fundamentally flawed, impulsive, and self-sabotaging nature of the product itself. He had meticulously built a beautiful stage, not realizing it was set for a demolition. The fuse was lit, and he had handed Meghan the match. Have you ever seen someone's entire brand strategy get obliterated in a single, unguarded moment? That's exactly what happened when a model stumbled on that Paris runway. It's a moment that happens. High heels, slick floors, the immense, crushing pressure of 1,000 cameras. The normal human, empathetic response is a flicker of concern, an involuntary wince of sympathy. But Meghan Markle, sitting front and center with the world's cameras trained on her face, did something else. She laughed. It wasn't a nervous titter. It wasn't a polite cough. It was a full, genuine, undisguised laugh at someone else's public moment of struggle and potential humiliation. Let's conduct a forensic examination of this moment, because this is not just a gaffe. It is a smoking gun that reveals everything. This single, spontaneous laugh sliced through years of carefully crafted PR spin about compassion, kindness, and female empowerment like a hot knife through butter. All the speeches, all the interviews, all the curated Instagram posts about supporting women incinerated in 2 seconds of pure, unadulterated schadenfreude. In that single, viral clip, she handed her critics all the ammunition they would ever need. Marcus Anderson, reportedly watching from the wings, was said to be apoplectic. Insiders claim he was livid, realizing in that instant that his meticulously planned comeback narrative had just been torched by his own client. The headlines he had envisioned, Meghan's stunning return, the Duchess dazzles Paris, were instantly and irrevocably replaced by Meghan laughs as model falls. He had built a pristine, multi-million-dollar narrative, and she had just vandalized it with a smirk. This moment revealed a profound, almost pathological lack of situational awareness. It was a complete failure to understand the most fundamental rule of public life. When you are the brand, every single reaction is a message. You are never off duty. That laugh showed a woman so utterly consumed by her own experience, so detached from the reality of those around her, that someone else's misfortune registered only as cheap amusement. It was the cold, hard, irrefutable proof of a narrative dissonance that has plagued her for years. The vast, unbridgeable chasm between the person she claims to be in carefully controlled settings and the person who is revealed when the mask inevitably slips. This wasn't a slip. It was a confession. Behind the glamorous facade of Paris Fashion Week, a war was raging. Not between rival designers or competing fashion houses, but between Meghan Markle and her own strategist, Marcus Anderson. The laughing incident wasn't just a PR blunder. Insiders describe it as a fundamental breach of trust, a moment of such catastrophic misjudgment that it has left their once unbreakable alliance hanging by a thread. For years, Anderson has been the architect of her public persona, the man cleaning up her messes, spinning her impulsive actions into coherent strategies. He orchestrated the Paris trip with the precision of a military campaign, designed to rebuild her image into one of untouchable sophistication and power. Instead, she made them both look like cheap, clumsy amateurs. Sources claim that backstage, Anderson was furious, not just at the laugh itself, but at what it represented, her complete and utter inability to follow even the most basic guidance. He's a connector, he's a fixer. He understands that in the high-stakes world of luxury branding, perception isn't just a part of reality, it is the entire reality. A brand ambassador, which is what she was auditioning to be, cannot be seen as cruel, dismissive, or classless. His entire gambit was based on presenting her as an aspirational figure, someone brands would pay millions to be associated with. Her reaction wasn't just unempathetic, it was commercially toxic. It was a brand killer. For a man like Anderson, whose reputation and income are built on his ability to connect powerful people and control sensitive narratives, this public failure was a personal humiliation. How can you sell a client to the world's biggest brands when you can't even trust her to behave appropriately for 10 minutes in the front row of a fashion show? Their relationship, once described as unshakable, is now reportedly under immense strain. While Anderson undoubtedly benefits from his proximity to her fame, there is a limit to how much damage control one person can do. When your client is a serial self-saboteur, a walking, breathing liability who torches every opportunity you create, you eventually have to ask yourself a cold, hard question. Is the commission worth the catastrophic risk to your own reputation? The Paris trip was supposed to be a triumph that would relaunch her career. Instead, it became a forensic case study in her own unmanageability. And it may very well be the moment her last remaining professional ally decided she was far more trouble than she's worth. Something absolutely massive just happened that completely destroys the Sussex PR machine. The creative director, still riding high on the global media attention from his hijacked show, sat down for an interview. He was confident, maybe a little too comfortable with his newfound fame, and that's when he did it. In one catastrophic moment of unguarded honesty, he detonated a nuclear bomb that obliterated Meghan's entire carefully constructed narrative. He admitted, on the record, that they barely knew each other. They had just been texting back and forth. That's it. Let that sink in. The entire elaborate story spun by Meghan's team of an organic collaboration, a deep mutual admiration between two creative souls, a long-standing friendship that culminated in this beautiful Parisian moment was a complete and total fabrication. He pulled back the curtain and showed the world the ugly, transactional truth. This was a cold, calculated publicity stunt coordinated between two near strangers via text message. This revelation is absolutely devastating for their version of events. It exposes a pattern of deception so systematic, so brazen, that it makes you wonder if anything they say is actually real. Her team didn't just embellish the truth, they manufactured it from whole cloth. They created a flimsy fairy tale to mask a desperate last-minute arrangement born of mutual opportunism. The director's candid admission wasn't just an interview slip-up, it was the key piece of evidence that unraveled the whole conspiracy. It was the receipt. It proved, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that the foundation of this entire Paris spectacle was built not on friendship, not on a shared passion for fashion, but on a cynical, manipulative lie. And it immediately begged a much more dangerous question. If they are willing to lie so casually and so completely about something as simple as how they met, what other bigger deceptions are they hiding from the public? Think about that. If the origin story is a fabrication, what else is? This was the precise moment their entire house of cards, built on a foundation of PR spin and manufactured narratives, began to shudder and collapse. And it was just getting started. But Bauer wasn't finished destroying Meghan's carefully constructed fairy tale. After the director's bombshell interview came an even more humiliating truth, a revelation from insiders close to the design studio that exposes the entire pathetic reality of her situation. The dress she wore, the centerpiece of her supposed fashion triumph, was not even designed for her. It was a hand-me-down, a cast-off. The gown had been originally created and meticulously fitted for another, legitimate A-list celebrity, a woman with actual fashion credibility, a real power player with a long-standing, respected relationship with the house. That celebrity, for reasons one can only speculate, looked at the opportunity and quietly declined. Perhaps she sensed the stench of desperation. Perhaps her team, unlike Meghan's, understood that associating their pristine brand with the Sussex Circus was a catastrophic mistake. She said no. So, Meghan got the sloppy seconds. She was offered the rejected dress, an outfit literally created for someone else's body, someone else's moment, someone else's brand, and she accepted it without a second of hesitation. Think about the cold, hard reality of that. Meghan Markle, the woman who constantly preaches about knowing your worth and the power of walking away, was so desperate for a foothold in this world that she willingly and gratefully accepted the role of second choice. This isn't the behavior of a global icon. It isn't the action of a power player. It is the craven move of someone with absolutely no other options, someone who will take whatever scraps are thrown her way just to get a photo in front of the right backdrop. This single, devastating detail exposes the entire transactional nature of the arrangement. She wasn't a muse, she was a mannequin of convenience. She wasn't a collaborator, she was a stand-in. The creative director needed a warm body to fill a dress and generate press, and she needed a free designer gown and a photo opportunity to fuel her Instagram feed. It was a transaction, pure and simple. And this fact completely demolishes the carefully curated image of a powerful, independent woman she tries so hard to sell to the world. She wasn't an equal partner in a creative endeavor. She was accepting a handout. And it confirms the whispers that have long circulated in elite circles from Hollywood to London, that behind the bravado, the titles, and the endless PR spin, she is still the same calculating social climber, willing to do whatever it takes to get a seat at the table, even if that seat is still warm from the person who just wisely walked away. Okay, so here's a wild question. What if your own talent agency, one of the most powerful and feared companies in Hollywood, decided you were so toxic, so radioactive, that they'd rather pretend you don't even exist? That's exactly what happened with Meghan Markle and the powerhouse agency William Morris Endeavor, or WME. As she paraded around Paris, generating headlines across the entire globe, her own agency, the people paid millions to promote her, maintained a deafening, deliberate, and absolutely brutal silence. Zero promotion. Not a single post on their star-studded social media feeds. No celebratory press release blasted out to the trades. Nothing. Let's put this into a forensic context. Talent agencies like WME exist for one reason and one reason only: to promote their clients and take a cut. It is their entire business model. When a client has a major public moment, a professional agency amplifies it across all channels. They do this to demonstrate their power, to show other potential clients the value of their representation. WME's silence wasn't an oversight. It wasn't some intern forgetting to post. It was a calculated, strategic, and ruthless decision to create distance. It was a public declaration of non-endorsement. They were watching the car crash in slow motion and refusing to be listed as a passenger. Industry insiders in Hollywood immediately understood the message. Meghan is on her own. This level of public ghosting from your own team signals one of two things, and both are catastrophic for a client's career. Either they are preparing to terminate her contract and are building a case for neglect, or they have already mentally checked out and are simply running out the clock until they can cut her loose. Both scenarios suggest the same damning conclusion. She is unmanageable. She ignores professional advice. And the agency has concluded that she is more liability than asset. While other WME clients, real A-listers, receive the full force of a global publicity machine, Meghan Markle gets radio silence. She is paying for world-class representation and getting absolutely nothing in return. This public shunning by her own team is perhaps the most damning verdict of all on her professional conduct. The Paris stunt wasn't just a fashion faux pas. It was a spectacular act of career self-immolation. And her own agents were the ones refusing to call the fire department. They just watched it burn. The WME ghosting is not an isolated incident. To understand its true devastating significance, we must connect it to the pattern. This is a forensic case file of wasted opportunity, and the evidence against Meghan Markle is overwhelming, damning, and irrefutable. Let's look at the receipts. Exhibit A. The British royal family. She was handed a global platform of unimaginable scale, a title dripping with 1,000 years of history, and a lifetime of meaningful, world-changing work on a silver platter. She threw it all away for a cheap Netflix deal and a mansion in Montecito. Exhibit B. Spotify. A $20 million contract to produce podcasts. $20 million. And what did they deliver? A handful of rambling, vapid episodes before a senior Spotify executive went on the record and publicly branded her and Harry as grifters. Not a whisper, not a rumor, a public execution by a corporate titan. And now, Exhibit C. WME. The Hollywood powerhouse that was supposed to engineer her glorious comeback is treating her like a contagion, refusing to even acknowledge her existence. Do you see the pattern here? This isn't just a string of bad luck. This is a coherent pattern of behavior. It is a chain of inconsistencies and failures stacked so high they collapse under their own weight. In every single instance, she is given a golden, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a partnership with a powerful, respected institution. And in every single instance, without fail, the relationship implodes in a firestorm of drama, unmet expectations, and public humiliation. The common denominator in every one of these failures is Meghan herself. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a conclusion based on evidence. It points to a person who is fundamentally incapable of taking direction, who prioritizes short-term, narcissistic publicity over any long-term viable strategy, and who profoundly misunderstands that professional relationships are not about what you can take, but what you can deliver. WME's silence is simply the latest chapter in a long, sad, and increasingly predictable story of career self-sabotage. They saw the Paris stunt for exactly what it was: an impulsive, amateurish move by an uncontrollable client that undermined any serious brand building they were attempting behind the scenes. Agencies want to sign clients who build empires, not clients who are constantly starting fires that they then have to put out. And the evidence now strongly suggests that WME, just like the royal family and Spotify before them, has finally decided that the Meghan Markle brand is, and always was, built on quicksand. What if I told you that Meghan Markle's entire glamorous Parisian adventure was a meticulously constructed lie, funded from start to finish by the very people she ended up humiliating? It's time to follow the money, because the receipts are the one thing her PR spin doctors can never erase. While she posed for cameras outside the legendary Plaza Athénée Hotel, projecting an image of independent wealth and effortless sophistication, a paper trail was being created behind the scenes that would expose the entire sham. Insiders with direct access to the financial records have delivered a bombshell revelation. The fashion house bankrolled everything. Let's be clear about what everything means. The opulent hotel suite, a space that costs thousands upon thousands of euros per night. The fleet of chauffeured limousines that ferried her across the city from one photo opportunity to the next. The entire logistical operation, from flights to security, was a paid-for package deal. She didn't spend a single dime of her own money. This isn't just a juicy detail. It is a fact that fundamentally changes the entire narrative. She wasn't a collaborator. She was a paid asset. She wasn't an honored guest. She was a promotional tool whose presence was purchased like a billboard. This financial dependency explains everything. It explains her willingness to accept a hand-me-down dress. It explains her tolerance for a chaotic, last-minute arrangement that any real A-lister would have rejected out of hand. She wasn't in Paris out of a deep passion for fashion. She was there because it was a free, 5-star luxury vacation attached to a global photo op. Sources close to her have confirmed for years that she has zero intention of ever opening her own purse for this kind of trip. There has to be something in it for her beyond just the publicity. Free accommodation, free transportation, a free designer wardrobe. That's the only way this trip made any sense from her transactional perspective. The brand, desperate for the media frenzy she generates, was willing to pay the price. But now, with the truth leaking out from hotel staff and financial insiders who talk, both sides are trapped in the lie. The brand looks desperate and foolish for having paid for her presence, and Meghan's carefully constructed image as a powerful, self-made woman is completely and utterly shattered. The invoices from the Plaza Athénée are the smoking gun. They are the time-stamped, irrefutable proof of a commercial transaction that she and her team tried to disguise as a personal triumph. The fairy tale was a fraud, and the receipts prove it. The revelation that the fashion house funded the entire Paris trip pulls back the curtain on the ugly, transactional truth of Meghan's current existence. Let's be brutally honest about what she is now. She is no longer a duchess in any meaningful constitutional sense. She is a celebrity asset for hire. Her name, her residual royal connection, and the controversy she reliably generates are commodities to be bought and sold to the highest bidder. When someone else is paying your bills, you are not in control. You are on the payroll. You are there to perform a service. And in this case, the service was to create a media spectacle, a cheap, viral moment. She was not invited to Paris to share her insights on design or to celebrate artistry. She was flown in, put up, and dressed up to be a human headline, a walking, talking engine for online engagement. This financial dependency doesn't just undermine her image, it completely obliterates the persona of a powerful, independent woman that she works so hard to project. Let's be real. Powerful, self-made women do not need their 5-star hotel bills covered in exchange for an appearance. They don't fly halfway around the world on someone else's dime for a photo opportunity in a borrowed dress. This Paris trip was not a power move. It was a paid gig, a piece of performance art, and the biggest lie of all was in the presentation. Both she and the brand attempted to frame this as a chic, organic meeting of minds, a beautiful story of mutual admiration between a visionary designer and a global icon. The truth, revealed by the financial records, is that it was a simple, grubby commercial exchange. The brand paid for access to her notoriety, and she accepted payment in the form of 5-star accommodations, luxury transport, and a free designer wardrobe. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that arrangement in the world of celebrity endorsements, except for one critical fact. They tried to deceive the public about it. This deception speaks volumes. It reveals a deep, profound insecurity about her actual status in the world. She knows, on some level, that being a duchess for hire is a significant and humiliating step down from being a working member of the British royal family. So, she must construct these elaborate, flimsy fictions to mask the harsh commercial reality of her new life in the gilded cage of Montecito. The Princess Act is just that, an act. The reality is much more transactional. But here's where the story takes a darker turn, because this trip was never just about fashion. It was never just about a free dress or a luxury hotel suite. It was a calculated, strategic message aimed directly at the heart of the British monarchy. By appearing in Paris, unannounced, unsanctioned, and utterly unbound, Meghan was making a brazen declaration of war. She was demonstrating on a global stage that she can and will operate on European soil whenever she damn well pleases, without the permission, approval, or security arrangements of the institution. Think about the sheer audacity of this move. For centuries, royal travel has been a matter of intense logistical planning and delicate diplomatic protocol. It is never undertaken lightly. But Meghan? She took that centuries-old script of tradition and duty and threw it straight into the shredder. This was her planting a flag in their backyard, signaling to the world and, more importantly, to the royal family, that she is no longer bound by their ancient rules. She can hop on a private jet, check into a luxury hotel, and command the world's attention just a few hundred miles from the gates of Buckingham Palace, all without any involvement from the family she so famously fled. In her mind, this was the ultimate proof of her victory. This was her freedom from the gilded cage made manifest. It was a carefully crafted piece of performance art designed to show the world that she is thriving, powerful, and utterly unconstrained by the ancient system she left behind. She wanted to create a jarring juxtaposition. The monarchy, old and stuffy, bound by tradition and duty, versus Meghan, the modern, free-spirited global citizen, living life entirely on her own terms. It was intended as a show of force, a visual representation of her post-royal power, but this reckless, narcissistic power move was about to backfire in the most spectacular and damaging way imaginable. Not just for her, but for her husband. She was so blinded by her obsession with sending a message to his family that she failed to see how she was simultaneously setting a perfect, inescapable legal trap for him. While Meghan was gallivanting around Paris in a blaze of self-generated glory, she was systematically dismantling her husband's most critical and emotionally charged legal battle. Let's be very clear about the timeline. Prince Harry has been locked in a prolonged, bitter, and increasingly desperate fight with the UK Home Office, demanding full, taxpayer-funded police protection whenever he deigns to visit his home country. His entire argument rests on a single, fragile premise: that it is impossible for him and his family to be safe in the United Kingdom without state-sponsored security. He paints a grim picture of constant, severe, and unique threat that only the British government can possibly mitigate. And then, in one fell swoop, his own wife single-handedly proved him wrong. She didn't just undermine his argument, she obliterated it. She traveled to a major European capital, a city with its own significant security challenges. She stayed in a highly public, world-famous luxury hotel. She attended a high-profile, globally televised event, swarming with paparazzi, and she moved around the city with her own private security detail, all without a single reported incident. She provided a perfect, real-world, legally devastating case study demonstrating that the Sussexes can, in fact, travel and operate safely in Europe without any involvement from the British state. The optics are a constitutional disaster for Harry. He is in court, in a case costing the British taxpayer hundreds of thousands of pounds, begging for protection, while his wife is simultaneously proving, with every flashbulb, that they don't actually need it. Can you imagine being the Home Secretary's lawyer in that courtroom? They don't even need to make an argument anymore. They can simply hold up a photograph of Meghan preening in Paris and rest their case. This wasn't just poor timing. This was a stunning, almost unbelievable act of narcissistic self-interest that completely and totally undercut her husband's position. She prioritized her fleeting desire for a fashion moment over his long-term security, his connection to his home country, and the entire legal foundation of his case. It reveals a chilling, undeniable reality. In the Sussex partnership, her ambitions always come first, even if it means making her husband look like a paranoid fool and torpedoing his legal claims. This was not partnership. This was total abandonment. Senior executives inside the fashion house were reportedly appalled by how the Paris appearance unfolded, and the reason cuts straight to the heart of the monarchy's modern legacy: Princess Diana. For a generation of people around the world, the city of Paris has been inextricably and tragically linked with Diana's memory. Her style, her grace, her vulnerability, and ultimately, her horrific death. She attended fashion events not as a conqueror demanding attention, but with a genuine humility and a quiet, profound respect that endeared her to designers and the public alike. She understood the golden rule. She was there to use her incredible platform to elevate others, not overshadow them. Then Meghan arrived. She stormed Diana's city, brazenly attempting to channel that same magic, that same beloved aura, for herself. But the result wasn't an homage. It was a cheap, clumsy imitation that felt more like a desecration of a sacred memory. The comparison was inevitable, and for Meghan, it was devastatingly unflattering. Where Diana was graceful, Meghan appeared brazen and demanding. Where Diana showed a genuine, curious interest in the craft and the artisans behind it, Meghan seemed interested only in herself, the camera, and the moment. The laugh at the fallen model was the final, unforgivable straw. It was a moment so profoundly at odds with Diana's well-documented legacy of compassion that it reportedly sent shockwaves of disgust through the brand's senior leadership. These are seasoned executives. They understand the weight of that history. They know that millions of people still revere Diana's memory. They saw Meghan's appearance not as a tribute, but as a tacky, opportunistic photo op that disrespected everything Diana represented. They realized they were dealing with someone who didn't understand the nuance, the history, or the emotional gravity of the stage she was on. They saw someone who looked at a powerful brand association, the Diana connection, and tried to claim it without earning it, without understanding it, and without respecting it. This clumsy, tone-deaf attempt to step into Diana's shoes didn't just fail, it backfired spectacularly, reminding everyone of the vast, unbridgeable gap between the authentic, heartfelt compassion of the mother and the calculated, hollow performance of the daughter-in-law. Here's the exclusive, devastating detail that turns this story from a simple PR failure into a full-blown tragedy of self-sabotage. Before the Paris circus ever happened, legitimate, high-level, and very quiet conversations were happening behind the scenes. Senior figures at the fashion house, intrigued by her global profile, were actively exploring the possibility of making Meghan an informal brand ambassador. This wasn't just a fantasy cooked up by her team, it was a tangible, real-world opportunity. A potential relationship that, if handled with skill, patience, and professionalism, could have provided her with a steady stream of income, the high-fashion credibility she so desperately craves, and the exact kind of sophisticated brand alignment she has been chasing since she fled the UK. All she had to do was play it smart, build the relationship slowly, show up when invited, act with a shred of professional decorum and respect for the brand's long heritage and creative vision, but she couldn't. She is constitutionally incapable of playing the long game. Instead, she did what she always does. She rushed the fence. She forced a situation, demanded the spotlight on her own terms, and turned what could have been a delicate, fruitful courtship into a cheap, tawdry one-night stand that left everyone involved filled with regret and embarrassment. The senior executives who were once seriously considering the partnership immediately and violently slammed on the brakes. Her behavior in Paris, the uninvited hijacking of the show, the classless laughing incident, the blatant and narcissistic disregard for the brand's own message was a parade of catastrophic red flags. They saw someone who cannot follow a script, who prioritizes her own fleeting, tacky publicity over a brand's long-term reputation, and who fundamentally lacks the grace and substance required for such a prestigious role. She had a golden ticket to the inside track in her hand, and she set it on fire right in front of them. This is the Sussex pattern in perfect microcosm. She is constantly presented with these incredible, life-changing opportunities, only to destroy them with her own lethal cocktail of impulsiveness, arrogance, and ego. The ambassador deal is now dead. The quiet conversations have ceased. The phone calls have dried up. And Meghan is once again left on the outside looking in, likely blaming everyone but herself for yet another door slamming shut in her face. It wasn't bad luck. It was sabotage. And the saboteur was herself. Just when you thought the humiliation couldn't get any worse, a single photograph began to circulate that captured the entire tone-deaf, classless nature of the Paris trip. There she was, Meghan, in the back of a taxi, with her feet casually propped up on the opposite seat. Now, in the grand scheme of global crises, this is a minor transgression. But in the hyper-specific, obsessively detailed world of luxury branding, a world built on an almost religious devotion to presentation, polish, and etiquette, it was a fatal, unforgivable misstep. The internet, predictably, erupted in a firestorm of mockery. Critics didn't just see a woman relaxing after a long day. They saw a profound and jarring lack of basic class. A stunning disregard for simple decorum. This wasn't a private moment captured by a long-lens camera. This was another performance, another piece of carefully staged relatability. And the message it sent was one of casual, sloppy entitlement, not sophisticated elegance. Real fashion icons, the very people whose ranks she is so desperately trying to join, are notoriously meticulous about their public image. They understand that every single photograph tells a story, and this photograph told a damning one. It told the story of someone playing dress-up, an actress who can put on the designer clothes but fundamentally lacks the innate polish and refinement to carry them off. For the fashion house that had just bankrolled her entire trip, paying for the five-star hotel and the couture, it was yet another moment of brand-damaging cringe. They had invested a fortune in projecting an image of timeless Parisian chic, and their chosen asset was being brutally memed across the internet for her lack of basic etiquette. These small moments are not small. They accumulate. They form a pattern. The cruel laugh, the hand-me-down dress, the tacky taxi photo, they all contribute to a single damning narrative that she is hopelessly and completely out of her depth. She is an actress playing the part of an aristocrat, and she keeps forgetting her lines. It's a exhausting, transparent performance art of social climbing, and the cracks are beginning to show for everyone to see. Now, let's talk about the people whose careers and dreams became collateral damage in Meghan's relentless narcissistic pursuit of the spotlight. The invisible victims. First, the models, young women, some of them teenagers, who have dedicated their entire lives to their craft, who have dieted, disciplined, and rehearsed for weeks, months, years, for their 30 seconds on a Parisian runway. They were rendered invisible. Their moment, the culmination of all that work and sacrifice, was stolen from them in an instant. Their names didn't trend, their faces weren't in the headlines, they were reduced to anonymous, blurry figures walking in the background of the Meghan Markle show. Then there is the army of creatives. The makeup artists, the hairstylists, the lighting technicians, the set designers, the entire unseen battalion of artists who worked tirelessly behind the scenes for months. Their artistry, their vision, their immense contribution completely and utterly erased. And most tragically, the designers themselves. The creative minds who spent months, if not years, pouring their financial and creative capital into this single collection. They saw their work, their art, their very soul, reduced to a single insulting phrase: the dress Meghan wore. The fashion industry, for all its flaws, is a community built on a deep and abiding mutual respect for the craft, for the process, for the people who dedicate their lives to creating beauty. When someone shows up and treats an entire collection launch like their own personal photo shoot, when they turn a designer's vision into a cheap backdrop for their own publicity campaign, the disrespect is felt deeply. And it is not forgotten. The backlash wasn't just from random commenters on the internet. It was coming from inside the fashion world itself. Whispers of frustration, disappointment, and pure, unadulterated anger circulated throughout the industry after the show. People talk, reputations are formed, and the reputation Meghan forged in Paris was that of a user, someone who takes without giving, someone who sees the work of others not as something to be honored and elevated, but as a platform to be exploited for her own gain. She may have been thrilled with the photos of herself, but she was completely oblivious to the trail of professional resentment and bitterness she left in her wake. The very people she needs to embrace her if she ever hopes to be a player in that world, the designers, the stylists, the editors, the models, are the very people she alienated. This is how you get blacklisted. Not with a public declaration or a dramatic press release, but with a quiet, collective, and final decision to never give you that kind of power again. So, what happens when your grand fashion comeback implodes in a spectacular fireball of lies and incompetence, leaving you looking desperate, amateurish, and financially dependent? You execute the classic Sussex pivot immediately. Within days of the Paris disaster, with the stench of failure still hanging heavy in the air, Meghan was suddenly spotted in New York City. But not at fashion events, not meeting with designers. She was photographed at carefully selected charity functions. It is the oldest, most transparent, and frankly, most cynical trick in the PR crisis management playbook. When your celebrity image is tarnished, retreat to the safe, unassailable territory of philanthropy. Wrap yourself in the warm, fuzzy cloak of good causes, pose for photos with smiling nonprofit organizers, and pray to God that the public has the short-term memory of a goldfish. This wasn't a genuine return to her humanitarian roots. It was a panicked, desperate act of reputational triage. She was attempting to rapidly and violently change the channel to force a new, more flattering narrative into the news cycle. She wanted people to forget the Duchess laughs as model falls headlines and replace them with compassionate Duchess supports community. But the pivot is too fast, too obvious, too clumsy. It's a classic case of trying to close the barn door long after the horse has bolted and burned the barn down. The people who matter, the fashion executives, the brand strategists, the powerful industry insiders, are not fooled for a second. They see this move for exactly what it is: a desperate attempt to wash away the stench of professional failure with the cheap perfume of charity. Sources confirm she was absolutely ecstatic with the glamorous hotel exit photos from Paris, believing they would cement her status as a global fashion icon. When the phone didn't ring, when the invitations didn't come, when the deafening silence from the fashion world became undeniable, the charity pivot was her only move left. But it's a weak one. You cannot erase a professional humiliation in Paris by attending a gala in New York. The damage is done. The verdict is in. And the people whose opinions she needs to build a career have already made up their minds. They've moved on. After the desperate pivot to charity came the silence. The cold, brutal, and most damning verdict of all. The flood of opportunities that Meghan and Marcus Anderson fully expected to materialize after her Paris stunt never came. The phone stayed silent. No designers were calling to dress her. No luxury brands were reaching out to collaborate. No major fashion houses were extending invitations to their next shows in London, Milan, or New York. The doors she so arrogantly thought she had kicked open in Paris remained firmly, irrevocably, and icily closed. This is more devastating than any negative headline could ever be. When the industry you are so desperate to conquer collectively and quietly decides to ignore you, your career in that space is over. It's a quiet, professional shunning, a pocket veto. They have seen the drama. They have seen the unreliability. They have seen the jaw-dropping narcissism and the way she makes everything about herself. And they have made a collective, cold-blooded business decision. She is not worth the risk. They watched her turn a respected, historic fashion show into a tacky, low-rent circus, and they have absolutely no interest in their brand being the next main attraction. While Meghan was hoping her performative charity appearances would repair the damage, the real conversations were happening without her. Behind closed doors in Paris, Milan, and New York, brands were planning their next multi-million-dollar campaigns, choosing their next ambassadors, and forming their next strategic partnerships. And her name was not on the list. The silence from the fashion world is the final, brutal, and undeniable proof that her entire gambit backfired completely. She sought attention, and she got it in spades. But she made the fatal mistake of confusing attention with respect. The industry gave her the fleeting attention she craved, and then, having seen more than enough, it turned its back for good. Her dream of becoming a fashion powerhouse is now on ice, frozen solid by her own toxic blend of arrogance and amateurism. She is left with a handful of glamorous photos from a trip she didn't even pay for, and a future of firmly closed doors. Let's bring this forensic case file to a close. The Paris Fashion Week debacle was not an isolated incident. It was a perfect, crystalline microcosm of the entire Sussex enterprise, a shoddy venture built on a foundation of lies, desperation, and breathtaking, world-class incompetence. Every single party involved in this fiasco is now scrambling to control a narrative that has spiraled into a black hole of contradictions. The creative director contradicts Meghan's team. The financial receipts from the Plaza Athénée contradict the carefully crafted illusion of independence. Meghan's brazen actions in Paris directly contradict Harry's legal case in London. It is a house of cards, and it has collapsed under the immense weight of its own deception. The final verdict is in. This was not a triumphant return. It was a poorly planned, amateurishly executed publicity stunt that damaged the reputation of a historic fashion brand, alienated an entire industry of professionals, sabotaged a potential multi-million-dollar ambassadorship, and fatally undermined Prince Harry's ongoing legal battle. Meghan is left in New York, pretending Paris never happened, a duchess of damage control in a state of perpetual crisis. But the internet doesn't forget. The fashion industry doesn't forget. And the institution, watching with cold, calculated indifference from across the Atlantic, certainly doesn't forget. This entire episode serves as the ultimate, irrefutable proof of the pattern we have identified time and time again. A tragic pattern of self-sabotage driven by an insatiable, pathological need for attention, completely uncoupled from any discernible talent, discipline, or long-term strategy. The question is no longer if her brand will fail, but how many more people and institutions she will burn on her way down. What do you think? Is this the definitive end of her fashion ambitions? Or is this just another chapter in the longest con in Hollywood history? Drop your thoughts below, because this case is far from closed. That's all the time we have for this deep dive into the Paris demolition. If you found this breakdown as explosive as I did, don't forget to subscribe to Spilled Royal Tea and hit the notification bell so you never miss another bombshell. What do you think? Was this Meghan's biggest professional blunder to date, or just another Tuesday in Montecito? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you think this story was shocking, you haven't seen anything yet. Click the video on your screen now for our forensic investigation into the timeline disasters of Meghan's early life. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Thank you for watching Spilled Royal Tea.